GDA created the ultimate soldier, GDA Mark. This is what happens when Invincible is raised by Cecil.
Are you sure?
Omni-Man would arrive on Earth with almost the same events we see in the series. Omni-Man would meet Mark's mother, Debbie. They would have their son, Mark, and the same events as the series would happen. Nolan getting genuine affection from Debbie and Mark. However, he had a mission to fulfill, eliminating the heroes of that time, as seen in the series. But he wouldn't stop there, going to eliminate his biggest obstacle. Immortal? Ha, no, the being most loved by him, Debbie. In this universe, Omni-Man would do it. Eliminating his wife, however, it wouldn't be easy. Feeling horrible for what he did to her. They would be the same feelings, or worse, that he experienced when he almost killed Mark in the original series, but with the difference that, with Debbie, there was no fight. And because she is very diplomatic, she surely tried to persuade Nolan not to do it. And the right words at the right time are harder than a blow. But although Nolan surely wasn't convinced, he eliminated her in a quick and painless way. But the guilt haunted him. And to make matters worse, Mark would arrive at that moment, but as a child, which means many things. First, Nolan would have started his massacre much earlier, besides possibly also thinking about eliminating his son. Since in the series, we see he anxiously waits for his son to get his powers so he wouldn't have to eliminate him, as it would confirm he is a Viltrumite. But if Omni-Man started the mission much earlier, it means he had lost hope that Mark was a Viltrumite, so he planned to eliminate Mark after his wife. But returning to the moment where Mark sees his father eliminating his mother, he would be in shock because he wouldn't know how to react. And Nolan, already eaten up by guilt and sadness, and having his son see him, would be the last straw. Thus, Nolan, escaping the pain from his actions, abandons Earth, leaving Mark alone, due to the recent events. With Nolan as the prime suspect, Cecil Stedman would send a team to investigate what had happened. The forces arriving at Nolan Omni-Man's house, and seeing the scene of a traumatized and shattered Mark next to his eliminated mother's body. And with the certainty that Omni-Man was no longer on Earth. The soldiers would rescue the little Mark and take him to the facilities for many tests and questions. Since in this universe, it's still not known why Omni-Man acted that way. Because Mark no longer had parents or a home to return to, it was very likely he would be put up for adoption. However, this child wasn't normal, as he was the son of the quote-unquote strongest hero on Earth. Although he hadn't shown extraordinary abilities or powers, with the intelligence that distinguishes Cecil, he knew that with enough support and the passage of time, his powers could appear and even be enhanced. For this reason, Cecil Stedman would present himself as the guardian stepfather of little Mark. Obviously, they would have to go through a grieving process. Since Mark had lost his mother at the hands of his father, although, that is to say, he wanted to start his new project as soon as possible. Mark didn't want to. For this reason, Cecil would explain what he wanted to do with him, basically the protector of Earth, an invincible hero. With a bit of therapy and Cecil's growth as a father, things would improve quite a bit. Although at first Mark didn't want to be a hero, thanks to Cecil's fatherhood and especially paternal love, he would begin training. Surprisingly, Mark would get his powers at 10 years old, getting them much earlier than the original Mark. And from that event, the trainings would be even heavier and more complicated to improve all of Mark's stats to the maximum. Besides, he wasn't held back. Think about it. If with 1 year of training, Mark improved 130%. Imagine if Mark had trained from age 10 at maximum intensity, and knowing that Mark has an almost limitless margin for improvement, now think how strong he would be at 15 or 20 years old. Additionally, Mark would be instructed in such a way that he would have no mercy on enemies. So there's no no-kill rule, besides learning from the best strategist in the world, Cecil. Due to his margin of improvement, the trainings would become increasingly difficult, precisely so he would improve. While he was an almost perfect being for destroying any enemy that threatened Earth, he was a very loving and protective boy, especially with his father. And although he knew he wasn't his biological father, Mark considered him as such, not only with the fact of being the strongest on Earth by a huge margin. He would also be given prosthetics, equipment, and all types of technology to improve him even more, having the best technology on Earth. But don't be mistaken, it wouldn't be like Tech Jacket Invincible, who was the weakest of all because he relied on the technology he had. Since Cecil knew very well this could happen, so he would receive equally hard training with and without the armor to improve his sync with the technology, but also improving his hand-to-hand combat to not depend on it, improving his stats even more, becoming the absolute soldier and hero of the GDA, Global Defense Agency. Thanks to the GDA's great influence, it's very likely he has access to teleportation, regimen, and other GDA projects to support Mark. As an additional detail, there is also GDA Rex with the official name Dirty Bomb, about whom there isn't much information other than that he was raised alongside Mark since they were small, and is his best friend, besides having great upgrades. For example, the energy absorbers can help Rex produce an explosion, even becoming a nuclear bomb with enough stored energy. Hence the name Dirty Bomb, besides being the commander of the shock forces, and as a great feat, defeating Kill Bill alone. The creator hasn't given more information about it. However, I don't think it's because he ran out of ideas, but rather that he doesn't have the time to publish all the details. But thanks to this comment, we know that opponents like Battle Beast were defeated by Mark, although it wasn't a fight as Beast wanted. He arrived with the regimen, but I clarify it's not because Mark needed them, but rather that the GDA doesn't play games. They throw everything at the beginning. And even then, it's not like the regimen are very useful against Battle Beast. Now that we know who GDA Mark is, let's imagine how he fared in the major events of the series. Because GDA Mark is a single unit with the entire GDA, it won't be as fair. Although by himself, the result would be 98% the same. With the arrival of Anissa, she would be detected by the radars. And due to the object's speed and the sensor delay in detecting her, they would send GDA Mark. Due to previous events like Alan, they would understand that not everyone is an invader. So he surely would have presented himself with a warning, but as a Viltrumite, her overconfidence and underestimating the enemy would leave her in a terrible situation. And when she realized the danger she was in and thought about taking things seriously, she would be eliminated and probably used by the GDA, as they did with the invincible bodies. The same case would happen with Conquest. However, a Mark with 1 year of training pulverized him. Now, a Mark at his 5th play? Although here, I think Conquest would put up more of a fight due to his battle experience. And not for nothing, the second strongest Viltrumite would give him a bit of trouble. But together with Cecil's strategy and Dirty Bomb, it would be all simpler. The real problem is when the number of enemies is large. For example, the Invincible War could put everything on edge, as everyone was on high alert. But with the help of teleportation, he could eliminate all threats more efficiently and quickly. Although it's clear that this war probably doesn't exist in this universe because Armstrong would be eliminated or captured in the first second, or maybe used for experimentation. And about the verses between original Invincible and GDA Invincible, I think you know it doesn't make much sense anymore. But I'd love to know who else you think could eliminate GDA Mark and how you think he would fare in other events. Leave it in the comments. You already know I love reading them, and it also helps a lot for YouTube to promote the video. That's all for today's video. I hope you liked it. Of course, if you did, remember to leave your like and subscribe if you haven't. Leave me in the comments how strong GDA Mark really is, if we know he could defeat Battle Beast. Also tell me which topic you want me to cover in the upcoming videos.